Hello world. Today we are going to talk about psychology in video games. This was actually the winning topic, winning theme in one of my polls. So today I'm going to talk um, how psychology works in video games, what is the view of psychology on video games, and maybe how I see video games on general. This is one of the topics in which I don't really have enough knowledge to fully explain it or talk about it, because I'm mostly interested um, in social media and anime. But since I've played some games and I'm still playing them, I thought about talking about them and how psychology can really help to explain some of the behaviors and other things in video games. So, thank you for joining this podcast or stream, and I hope you will learn something new. And if you're new here, when I have podcast or this stream, you can always write questions to me. And I also got some questions before the actual stream from my top fans. So thank you for all the fans who are sticking to me every time, liking my posts and videos I'm sharing. So as usual, this video will also be posted on YouTube, but I'm making this stream on Facebook because if I want to make a stream with my phone on YouTube, I actually need at least 1,000 subscribers. So far I'm going to post my streams on Facebook first and then my video on YouTube. So firstly, psychology in video games. So one of my top fans, Liam, asked me about violence in video games. So I thought I'm going to explain this first, because this is actually an really interesting and common topic nowadays. So as you know, many people say that video games are causing violence, especially because of some events such as shootings and other things, because many people who cause problems actually played video games, and maybe many children or adolescents who are violent or aggressive might play video games in the past or something. So we know that this was actually one part of it was actually part of my master's thesis. So the idea is, if a person is watching or playing something, if they will repeat the same behavior in real life as well. So first theory, which questioned about children being aggressive, was actually the theory of psychologist Bandura, which was who was researching model learning, or um, he then named it social learning, because we are learning in society and from other people, but model learning. So when he was doing research, TV was really popular, and many people were asking themselves, if a child is watching a television program and this program is violent, will the child be violent or not? And then Bandura made this famous experiment with Bobo doll. This is a doll which is made like that if you're punching it, it comes back to you. So basically, it's like a punching bag of some sorts. Um, and he actually made like experiment like that. A model, basically an adult was playing in front of children, and one model was playing nicely, playing with teacups and things like that, and the other one was really aggressive with playing. They were punching the Bobo doll and other things, and then they were observing children who were playing in the same environment, and they actually find out that um, they were repeating some behavior, but not all of the children were repeating it. And when he was making more experiments, at the end, there was a conclusion that, of course, children and other people uh, can repeat the behavior, but it depends on many things, such as what kind of model it is. Because it was a adult model, not many children were repeating after it. Or, for example, not many children repeated that behavior because they thought it was mean and they didn't feel like it. And there is also if I look back at that experiment, there is also a problem. It is playing, but those children didn't actually repeat that behavior in real life. So actually, children and adolescents and well, average people can differ between a play or fantasy or movie and reality. So basically, many people can watch aggressive behavior in movies and video games, but actually they won't repeat it in real life because of many reasons. One of the reasons can be because they actually have high moral standards. Basically, they don't want to harm another person. Or one of the reasons it could be that they will be punished and they don't want to be punished, so they don't do that behavior. So basically, children are also affected by their parents. If their parents are teaching them not to behave like that in real life, they won't repeat that behavior. So with the video games, it is similar thing. So if you're playing a video game, that doesn't mean that you will repeat the same behavior in real life. Um, there was never, they never found the effect of causation. Basically, if you play video games which are aggressive, you will be aggressive. They've never find that causation, um, that cause connection. Basically, that video game is first and then you repeat the behavior. There are, of course, connections, but when we are talking about connection between video games and aggressive behavior, we need to think that they are in both ways. So basically, a video game can cause violence, but also a violent person can play a violent video game so they can relax and get that violent behavior energy outside. So we never know which thing is first, video games or aggressive behavior. And as I said, average people, average child, average adolescent won't repeat that behavior because they know it's not good. They are not motivated for them. Um, that experiment which Bandura made, it was also recognized that if you are giving a reward for certain behavior, that means that people will repeat that behavior more frequently, and it would be more likely for them to repeat the behavior. For example, if they would be given money or something. But at the same time, Bandura was surprised that even though there was money, some people still didn't repeat the behavior. So basically, it is not just video games and movies, but there is so many things behind that can lead to certain behavior. And like I said, if a person is playing a video game, that doesn't mean they will be violent. But there are some there's some characteristic of people which can cause to violence. For example, if a child is violent, um, like their behavior is violent and they're violent by nature, they have aggressive kind of personality, and they have um, they have violence in the family and around them. The environment is violent, and the environment is actually supporting that kind of behavior. There is higher chance they will be violent if they're playing a certain video game, which is also violent. But at the same time, we won't know if the violence is actually caused by video game or actually the violence in the family. So you need to know that in psychology there is never one answer. So if you ask me, do video games cause violence? I will always reply with it depends, and then we'll explain why. Um, so we actually don't know, never know if something is causing violence or not. Because if you want to know for sure if video game is causing violence, you will need a child which will grow in environment, basically which will be playing games non-stop and won't have interaction with others, and that is impossible, and also it is not right thing to do. So we never can fully say that a video game is causing violence, because there are also other influences around us. But many people say it causes violence because they either don't understand how the science behind it work, or because in general we're always blaming something, and I guess blaming video games is the easiest solution some people have at this time. Yeah, Bandura theory is one of my favorites, and that's why I was making thesis about it, not with video games, but with YouTube. But this is a story for another time. Um, and before I start to answer some more questions, there was also a question from Lila, which is also one of my top fans, and she asked if I could explain the psychology or mechanism or my opinion about games which are for adults, for 18 plus or more, and that games could be bought by parents and that games could be played by younger people. So there is a huge problem going on. As you know, movies and games and other things have certain age limit. So basically, some games are for adults only, some are for children, and some are for like adolescent and so go on. And there is a problem because even though certain game says it's for 18 plus or 15 plus or 16 plus, many parents are buying that for their younger children, even though it clearly says it's not for them. Because you need to know how the mind and brain and actions and thinking of a child are working. Games have that age limit for a reason, so are the movies and the cartoons and so go on. Because when a child is developing, first of all, at certain ages they don't have critical thinking, and at certain ages the limit, the borderline of fantasy and real life is not that clear, that sharp as as it is in adulthood. So we basically know that fantasy and real life are not the same, and we differ what we see on television, in movies, in games, and in real life. But if you know, children at certain age cannot do that, and then they have imagination, they're playing, like everything is possible in their games, they are believing in certain monsters and like uh, certain fairy tales, they are believing in many things. And then a certain age they know that something is on television and something is in real life, but for that of course they need parents. So if you're a parent or you're working with children, it is the best to watch things with them and explain to them, because many times children don't understand certain things and certain things scare them because they think they are real and they will happen to them, and it is a good thing to support them. And with video games it is the same thing. Certain games are for younger children because they are not so intense, they're easy to understand, they have repeated scenes because children need security, and security is provided with repeating. In the families, there are certain routines, and in the television, in the cartoons, we have repeated scenes because children feel safer that way. Same with video games. And and so uh, there are that kind of video games for children for a reason. Also because you need to know that when you're watching a television, you're not that active as in video game. And in video game where you are a certain character, you actually behave like that character, you're exploring the environment, you're helping them to achieve certain missions, and that can be really tense to the point that you kinda lose yourself in that character. And in younger age, I believe it is more difficult to differ between yourself and that character. Also, many games for adults have certain violent and scary themes, and for children which have their fears and don't can't really control their emotions and think about it, it is very difficult because then they have nightmares, they then think everything is real, everything can happen in real life. So it is really important that when you are buying a video game or anything else, that you actually read about age limit. And of course, a child can say, "Yeah, my friends are also playing that." Yeah, but it is still not a reason for you to buy something. And then if you buy certain thing and everything will go wrong, it actually is not the fault of the company, but a fault of a person who um, bought certain games. So you have to think about it before you buy it and maybe ask someone and things like that. Um, because otherwise there will be an example such as a really famous example when a certain child, I don't know if it was a child or adolescent, played Doki Doki Literature Club, and this game actually it is not suitable for certain ages because of certain topics like suicide and bullying, but parents bought the game anyway, and that boy played it, and at the end he killed himself. So it is really important before you buy a game that you actually read age limit and maybe ask someone about it, and not buy the game only because a child wants it and everyone is playing it. It's better to maybe buy similar game but for more suitable age. I know that children can be disappointed um, in that, but because they won't get certain game, but it is better to explain to them that you care about them and so go on. So there are age limits for a reason in many things. And if they end up somehow, because as you know, children nowadays can easily find the game or anything online, or even if you have limits at home, they can find it at their friend's house or in school. It is important to talk about those things. So it is important that from younger age that you are active with playing video games or at least watch the children play, because when children are younger they actually like for you to be there and to be active with them in playing video games or anything else. But the more older they get, the more difficult it would be to uh, you to engage in gaming or other activities. And at certain points they can even stop talking about things like when they are older. So it is better for you to at least know about the gaming world and talk about it and talk about your concerns and so on. But yeah. So this is my opinion about it. And then Liam asked another questions. If there are any video games I like and if I ever analyzed a game before. So I started my analysis with anime. And sometimes I use that analysis in movies as well. When I was younger, I was probably using something similar in books, but I've never actually actively analyzed a video game until this summer because I started to play Super Mario Maker 2. I was thinking about writing a blog because I was actually analyzing the online um, multiplayer mode which Super Mario Maker 2 has, which is a new thing in Super Mario Maker, because it was really an interesting thing. First of all, when you play it, you can choose two modes. One of them is that you need to compete against each other, and the second one is that you need to cooperate with one another to complete the level. I was actually playing the cooperate mode a lot and was thinking about the psychology behind it. So first of all, only 4 players can play. Sometimes if there is not many people around or there is a slow internet connection, you will pair with someone or play in group of 3. But you're always like have one person to play with and cooperate with. What I noticed with my analysis of this is that there are two kinds of players. Uh, in Nintendo, online Nintendo, you cannot know how old players are, but I believe I can differ between the younger generation and older, but I could be wrong. So my conclusion was that the older generations are using short messages which you can use in that game, and also certain movements with which you actually can communicate. Super Mario Maker 2 is interesting because when you are playing with other players, you actually cannot interact with one another and like talk in the microphone, or at least I didn't see that option. You actually can communicate with 10 short phrases you choose, and you can communicate with movements. And now there is a big challenge how to say to another player that you need help. one thing is that you press the pre-chosen phrase which says help. But another thing is that some players are using um, movements like bowing. So if you press the button down, Super Mario actually gets down or looks down, but it's it is like he's bowing. And there many people are using that for saying I'm sorry, or for like showing that you can go first, or they're grateful for something, or they just want to uh, talk talk about something. And another thing is that uh, you need to observe another player really well to see what they want to show you. If they, for example, go close to you and then to something else and repeat that, you might think, oh, so they want for you to follow them. So basically, Super Mario Maker 2 is a multiplayer game, is a game where you have so limited communication, but with practice, and I saw in many skilled players, you can actually communicate so much with only like a movement of jumping or something. And I really like that. And also notice that there are many people who are trying to be mean on purpose and don't want to cooperate with you, or they're throwing you into lava or in pit or on spikes, or they don't want you to move forward. So basically that short game with four people can actually explain everything it is going on in real life right now. So we have mean people, we have people who don't listen, don't observe, we have people who communicate well, even though the communication is limited. We have people who are helping each other, and also people who are trying to compete in the cooperative game. So some people, instead of being a group and helping each other, are actually trying to get to the goal first. And they like, not many compete the level unless it is a really easy one. So this is actually my first game. I was really analyzing and thought about it. Um, so it is really a good way to learn how to help each other, communicate, and cooperate each other. Also, because mm, that game is also really laggy, and it sometimes needs a lot of patience. So that is another thing you can learn in that game. So yeah, that is one of game I analyzed. But another game I'm thinking about it is Life is Strange, the whole genre. But that game is actually not that hard to analyze because it is actually a story, and it is like you would, well, no, it is actually like you are watching a movie or something, so it is easier to uh, explain, but I didn't really fully analyze it. And then Lala has another question. Do you think there's anything to trolls? The way they enjoy annoying others in games and ruining experiences? Well, trolls don't only exist in games, but in real life too. There are many people who are trying to make fun of others or prank them. Um, I believe there is always many reasons behind it. Either they are bored, or they want to hurt others, or they think it's funny, because if you troll them, many funny things for them happens. But it seems like they don't realize that their jokes are actually hurting others, especially behind the screen, because behind the screen you cannot see the pain of other on the other side, especially in game. In game, trolls can think, oh, it is only a character, I will troll them, I will troll them, and nothing bad can happen, I will have some fun. I also believe they can kinda get their frustration out, because, like I was explaining with the internet, in games you can also get your frustrations out. Everything can be possible in games, and you think that even if you're killing a certain character or trolling them, nothing can happen to the player. But actually, you can really hurt them, especially if a game is that kind in which you have to put all your energy into it and work hard, and then someone is trolling you and you lose everything. And while I was talking about this, I remembered the game The Sims. This is also an interesting game, and GTA. And now I remembered, since Liam asked that I was actually analyzing those two games for one of reports or project in college. Actually, I was analyzing GTA, to be exact, and then I mentioned The Sims, because The Sims, it's really interesting game because it is really open world like, and you can build and create everything, and many people try to torture and kill and neglect their Sims, and it is really interesting why they're doing that. And I don't know, it seems that we are all really mean and aggressive in our core, but our society doesn't really allow that to spread, and we need to follow the rules and laws, but that energy is somewhat building inside of us. And for me, it seems the more frustrations and conflicts are in the world, the more are people running to the video games and they're getting their frustration out because they cannot in real life. And The Sims is one of that kind of reasons. And also, it seems like people are interested in dark side of the whole world, which is also interesting because we try to make this world a better place. And with GTA, it is also interesting because it is actually a simulation of certain cities in America, like Los Angeles and New York, and and things like that. And there was a person who made an experience in GTA. They were actually trying to figure out if cops in that game are actually programmed to be racists, and they took the fifth series of GTA, and where you can choose three different characters, and one of them is so basically two are white and one of them is black, if I remember correctly. And when they changed the characters, and they were having different types of guns in their hands, and they were walking around the policeman, it happened that that policeman wasn't reacting to the white people but was reacting to the black character. And they actually, that person who was actually making that experiment said that they put some racist characteristic in the GTA. And that experiment was really interesting because they thought about everything. They were trying to get that characters at the similar place, similar time, so there wouldn't be any other variables. such as time and place. And it is also interesting how we are putting our worth into the games. Sometimes on purpose, sometimes we don't even know that they are there. So those are games which I was actually analyzing a bit. And Liam has another question. Do you think that because of growing up in this era of video games, we will be able to relate to our kids or future generations better? I know some older people who didn't grow up with our video games, that like them, and some that despise them. What do you think is the psychology behind that? I actually strongly believe that we as parents can be maybe better parents or at the same time worse parents. It can backfire because we our generation likes anime video games, and if you like anime, I believe you will be able to watch cartoon or other animations with your children, and you would enjoy them, and your child would be happy, and you would talk about it and explain cartoon or movie better. Same with video games. We also kinda know which games could be good for children, and we would actually love to play video games with our children. So basically, more interaction, more talking about it, and researchers show that a parent who is actually really active when it comes to watching videos and probably video games, who is talking about it and who is setting certain rules, for certain, uh, for example, how many times you play a certain game or online and which games you can actually play. Those parents actually benefit a lot, and their children actually don't repeat that risk behavior such as addiction and other things. So I think that is a plus. On the other hand, our generation is in need of video games and anime and other things so much that I'm worried that we will spend too much time on that, and our children as well, because some people in our generations cannot stop that behavior and don't really know how to plan the gaming time and online time. And if our children are watching us, they will maybe end up the same. So it could backfire. And the researchers also say that if you are active in watching videos, and I believe in video games too, it can backfire because you can be online with children too much. So I think when you have children and you need to think about plans, how many hours or minutes a day you will play games and watch videos, and you need to stick up to that. Or maybe have that time for yourself when children are sleeping or something, because as we know, and I believe I see the pattern, the older our children and the older we are, the more we need games and anime for some reason. And that reason can be that our life is becoming so stressful that we need to get that frustration out. And because our lives are so fast and so busy, we don't have another options as to go online. We could basically go outside, and many go, or travel or talk to friends, but because we are so busy and tired from our work and school, we sometimes rather escape to the internet world and video games because it is easier. So it can have pluses and minuses, and we will need as millenniums and Z generation, which is behind us, to figure out what to do. Then Lila, and Liam also said that older people despise them and so on. Well, on general, well, some other people don't really like changes, and they and we all think that the world we were growing in, the things we know are the best, and it is very difficult to break up that pattern. So they were growing in different times, and they had so much fun, and sometimes not all older people, but sometimes don't understand how can you be happy with that, because if I play video game, I'm not that happy and I don't understand. I think the happiness is something else. While others who try them, and if probably if they would be our age, they would be gamers, and they would be otakus and so go on, but they actually understand. So the psychology behind this, that you know, on general, I've also met young people who don't like video games. They exist. So it really depends on person. But with other generations, because they didn't grow up and they don't understand and they have certain mindsets, such as, I don't know, TV is evil, video games are evil, what you cannot control and see is evil, they don't really try to understand why we like them. So, in general, the best solution is that even if you don't understand anything, just let that people behave that way unless they're hurting you or others. And sometimes it is really good to ask them questions and try something to actually see if you don't like something, or you just don't like it because majority or your friends say it is wrong or it is not good. Okay, and then Lila had question and comment. Oh, a question and comment. A bit of a positive thought. Some games are even able to show perspectives of things such as war. People don't really realize what it's like, and games are able to give us new perspectives of lives we may never see or live. Not a question, but I like the thought. I also like that thought, also because I don't know if you know, but video games are actually used in psychology. One meme I made a few months ago, when there was a bunch of memes of video games cause violence. Actually, psychology and neuroscience and other science are actually using video games more and more and more, because like Lila said, you can show different perspective and different places you cannot visit in real life. Or for example, if you are helping a person with anxiety, I know, or fear of heights, you can actually show them simulation of that, so they don't need to go to that scary high place first, but first experience it in simulation. And because video games and simulations are getting more and more similar to real life, the person can actually experience what it would be like. But at the end of the whole therapy, they actually need to go outside to the real place and experience it like that, but slowly. And also, it is a good chance to learn something, like if you cannot travel, or virtual reality is a good way. In virtual reality, you can also exercise. Like, I know when Dash is playing those kind of games, he's really exercising, because you have to move around, you have to do certain tasks, and it is really a fun thing to do. Now the real question is, which is now coming more and more in front, how this technology affects our brain and our eyes and our well-being in general, because those are devices and not real life, and those questions are becoming more and more in front. Same with smartphones, because some games can be played on smartphones, as you know, many say they cause radiation and so go on. So this is another question we will need to at least answer to certain point of our lives. And yeah, you can learn a lot about things that didn't happen in your lifetime, before and after, and certain places you cannot visit. And yeah, it is used in therapy, and I find it really funny. If video games are violent, why are we using them in therapy? And then not all video games are violent. So it is like that. I also remembered something else which I need to say about video games. As you notice, I started to talk more and more about video games on my blog. Um, Also because there is lots of things going on around the world. But first, I will answer Lila's question, because she said, adding a question to what I said, are there any games you've seen that gave you a new perspective of something? Oh, that's a really good question. I really need to think about it. I used to play video games mostly for fun. I didn't really mind about what I'm playing. And then when I got older, I realized that games can give you so much more than just fun and playing. Um, One game I'm really into it is Life is Strange at the moment, I mean. Maybe I'm asking certain questions when I don't know, watching gameplays and things like that, or immerse into that game, basically about life. Maybe I gained some new perspective about America, because when I'm like watching those characters in that culture, I can only imagine how it's like, because it seems like really different from where I'm from. Um, Also, there was a question about powers. If you had same power, um, or powers, because there are many characters, would you use them? And how would you use them? I think I maybe gained some new perspectives of America, and maybe about my country, because I was comparing them. But overall, I don't know, I think I gained more things from anime, because I mostly watch anime. I don't play as much games as I did before. So maybe I will find something if I think about it, because I've never thought what games gave to me. Mostly they gave me um, certain skills, like with my hands or with my eye perception, um, and thinking about certain things like planning way ahead, or strategy. But when it comes to my mind and thoughts, I don't think there was so many changes in my perspective. And now a thing I wanted to also talk about is that I think it was last year they suddenly start talking about playing video games as mental, well, I think they said it, illness, which I really don't like. But they started to talk about video games as some kind of, um, some kind of cause of certain mental problems. And I remember that day that some said that, okay, so if you're playing a video game, you're automatically ill, or you have mental disorder. And I remember that when I was looking at Asian Boss video about video games in video games and about that mental disorder which video games might cause. And I was listening to different media in my country and around the world. I realized that when it comes to psychology and psychiatry and things like that, people are actually interpreting it really differently, and they only see certain information. So I remember that I was explaining about it. So the Worldwide Health Organization has their own list of mental disorders, and this is classification which is actually used in practices like psychology, psychiatry, and they actually have it numbered and in groups. For example, you can find mental disorders, you can find addictions, you can find, I don't know, dementia, and other things. And this classification is helping to classify certain diseases and mental disorders and so go on. And when I think I was in first class of my master study, first year of my master study, we were actually talking in one clinical psychology class that they were going to make a new classification, not new on whole, but from now and then they are making some changes because views on mental disorders are changing, procedures are changing, and technology and techniques are changing. So they wanted to make it a new one. And I remember our professor, and we were watching a video about discussion about this, mentioning they were going to correct some things. Some mental disorders actually didn't exist. Well, they still exist, but they have new name, or some are not even present anymore. Then that they will try to talk about non-chemical addictions more. Non-chemical addictions are basically addictions with video games, gambling, basically things which you are not putting inside your body like alcohol and drugs, but they can still affect you and cause addiction. And they will start to think about it more because there is more and more things, and to make a better classification to help more people. And I remember we were talking about, and I thought it was really good because they're trying to make new things which are similar to what we have right now, because that old classification was so old that some things were renamed or didn't exist anymore. And then suddenly uh, people start to say that gaming is a disorder. And I was actually reading that classification. You can also find it online. It is open one. You can find it. And what I found is that addiction is still there. All of the addictions, because some people said, "Oh, so they are talking about video games and addiction, but they don't talk about other addictions." It is wrong. They still have all the addictions, but in video games they actually name it like, I don't know if it is video game disorder. I don't really remember, but if you look what it is not that you are playing games and you are have mental disorder because of that, but it is like if you are playing games constantly for I think 6 months or more. I think there are also hours a day, but even if you do so, you there is still a chance you're not addicted, because if you're addicted, you basically don't eat properly, don't sleep properly, your whole life is like a mess, and you don't visit your friends, your grades are starting to fall, you don't go outside, and this is called a disorder. But what they did wrongly, and I agree with other psychologists, is that they named this disorder, and they don't think that behind that it is actually depression, anxiety, and so go on. So I think it would be better for them to still call it addiction like it was previously, but maybe set set symptoms more clearly or something, like 6 months or so go on. And I remember people were panicking, and this is the cause of media because there is a classification which should be used with professionals, and people see it and they interpret it on their own. So gaming is not mental disorder, but if it is like similar to addiction one, that we are addicting to gaming and some other things, it is now can be called as disorder. But there are many classifications. This is only one of them. This is more like medical one, if I remember correctly. So medical one on medical model, which is used in psychiatry, but we have psychological model and we have other classifications. So at the end, I think at the end it doesn't matter what diagnosis classification you have. At the end, everyone is unique and everyone needs different treatment. Of course, it is a good way to know what it is called, but more than that, it is more important to know how we should treat it and help people. And I remember there was lots of fuss about it, false information, because people are not familiar with that classification. I was researching a bit at that time. I remembered things from my studies. So overall, every time I'm talking about things, if I'm wrong, please correct me. Uh, but those are information I was learning about, and this is one topic I wanted also to cover here. And Liam says that a game I actually find to be pretty interesting is a VR game called VR Chat. It just allows you to choose an avatar and walk around and talk to people. You have many kinds of people, like guys pretending to be girls and using voice changers to troll people. You also get many who go around bullying people. It seems like as video game technology and VR advances, it seems that certain members of the community become more out of hand. And he asked, are certain technologies giving people more opportunity to do bad? I believe so, because if you see on the internet and smartphones and what is going on, there is lots of mean people, there is lots of bullying, and the more technology are evolving in that way, it seems that more people are becoming that way, at least online. Believe that I think that um, those people who are bullying in real life don't are not certainly 100% bullies in real life. They could be, but it depends, because in real life you are actually seeing the person, but in online world you don't see the person and you can do so much more, and you can be anonymous, and you can hide behind, I don't know, your avatar or things like that. So it is possible that technology is making people bad because you don't see the person and you can still think, oh, it is only an avatar, there is no person behind it. um, so this is really a challenge for the future, how to teach people, or how can people actually feel that there is a person behind the screen. And I see that some people really have that kind of skill, that they can actually feel from the words what that person behind the screen is feeling. Uh, I think psychology really needs to research all of these things, and I'm glad I'm one of psychologists who's interested in that, because technology is going way ahead and is going out of our hands. There is bullying, there is everything online, and it seems like we don't have time or don't see it, I don't know, to research it properly. And yeah, there are many examples that even though if you are playing video games all the time, it doesn't mean that you are addicted. For addiction, it needs more symptoms. Um, you can of course play more than it's needed and is a problem, but if you can shorten that time, if you can put away for studying or something like that, like Lila said, then it is not clear that, or 100% sure that you are addicted to video games. Of course, there is still difference between certain scientists and others about it, what is addiction, what is not. But I think as long as you're healthy, you're taking care of yourself, your grades are good, you are achieving your goals, you have um, you're socializing with friends and family, and think you're good, even though you can play games more. Yeah. So Liam point out interesting topic about technology. It is about anime called Kisniver, uh, where people feel each other's pain. This is, if you look at my Anime Planet list of psychological anime, which I need to update, uh, the Kisniver, one of good psychological anime, and I was also analyzing it for the article in magazine Magnet, and I was asking myself about experiments and science and about pain.